The morning my daughter told me I was spending money that belonged to her future was the morning everything changed. She didn't say it that bluntly. People rarely do. What she said was, "Dad, you need to think about what you're leaving us." She said it quietly, carefully, the way you say something you practiced in the car on the way over. And I sat across from her in the living room I had paid for, in the house I had spent 20 years building a life inside, and I nodded slowly and said, "You're right, Maddie, I hear you." But what I was thinking, what I was actually thinking, sitting in that chair, was something I had never once allowed myself to say out loud. My name is Walter Briggs. I am 67 years old. I live in the Thornwood Heights neighborhood in Chandler, Arizona, off Ridgecrest Drive, on the same block I have lived on for 20 years. Same house, same yard, same man. I spent 36 years working as a civil engineer and project director for a large infrastructure firm based out of Phoenix. I retired as senior director of project delivery for a company responsible for some of the largest roadway and bridge contracts in the southwestern United States. I got up before sunrise 5 days a week, sometimes 6. I drove practical cars. I wore the same brand of work boots for 9 years because I didn't see the point in buying new ones while the kids were still in school and dependent on us. I packed a lunch cooler every morning for 30 years, rather than spend money eating out. I declined upgrades on flights. I clipped coupons when my wife Ellie asked me to, and sometimes when she didn't. What my children never knew, what I never showed them, was that every bonus, every merit raise, every dollar I did not spend on myself went into a brokerage account I had opened quietly in 1994. I maxed every tax-advantaged retirement vehicle the IRS would allow me to touch every year for 36 years. I lived modestly by deliberate choice while building something I never once talked about. Not to my kids, not to my colleagues. I didn't need the recognition. I just needed it to be done. My 67th birthday fell on a Tuesday in early October. Ellie made pot roast my favorite. Our son Trent called. Our daughter Madison called. Short calls. Warm enough. The kind that feel like a test you passed without studying hard for. They were busy. I understood. What they didn't know was that 4 days before my birthday, I had walked into a dealership on Scottsdale Road and signed papers on a 2024 Mercedes-Benz S-Class. Obsidian black. Cream interior. Every feature I had looked at on their website for 7 years without ever allowing myself to click the inquiry button. $94,000. I paid cash. I drove it home and sat in my driveway for 14 minutes before going inside. I ran my hand along the steering wheel. I looked at the precision stitching on every seam. I listened to the kind of silence that serious engineering buys you. And for the first time, in longer than I could name, I felt like I had done something for Walter. Not for the college accounts. Not for the roof replacement. Not for Madison's first and last month deposit on her apartment, or for Trent's car insurance that had been routing automatically through my account since he was 19 years old. For me, I should have known that feeling had a limited shelf life. Madison came by on a Saturday morning about a week after my birthday. She didn't call. She just appeared the way she does, pulling into the driveway and then simply stopping. Not getting out. Just sitting there, staring at the Mercedes like it had said something to her she needed a moment to process. I saw her from the kitchen window. I smiled, picked up my coffee, walked out to the front step. "Morning, sweetheart." She got out of her car slowly. Her eyes never left the car. "Dad, what is that?" "That's my birthday present to myself, Maddie." "Isn't she something?" She walked a full, deliberate circle around it, like she was looking for damage. Or evidence. "You bought that? When?" "Last week." "How much was this, Dad?" I took a slow sip of my coffee. 94,000. The sound she made was not quite a gasp, and not quite a word. It was something in between. The sound of something impossible turning out to be real. She was already reaching for her phone before she got back to her own car. I already knew who she was calling. Trent showed up the next morning. Madison was with him. They hadn't called ahead. They never call ahead when they're coming together. When they call ahead, it's casual, a check-in, a Sunday plan. When they show up side by side unannounced, it means there has been a conversation I wasn't part of. It means there is an agenda, and both of them have decided what it is. Ellie was in the kitchen. She caught my eye when we heard the car in the driveway. Her look said, "Be patient with them." My look said, "I already know exactly what this is." They came inside, Trent on the sofa, Madison in the armchair near the window, the same chair she had claimed as hers since she was 8 years old. I sat across from them. Nobody spoke for a moment. I let the silence stay. I have been in enough conference rooms across 36 years to know that whoever breaks the silence first gives something away. Trent leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Dad, we want to talk about the car." I figured. He said it the way a person says a number they find embarrassing. $94,000. It's a fine automobile, Trent. That's not the point. He glanced at Madison. She took that as her cue. "Dad, we're concerned." She folded her hands in her lap. "You're 67. You should be building a cushion right now, not drawing one down." I looked at her. "Drawing down? What exactly?" She gestured vaguely. "Your savings. Your reserves. Like you have unlimited funds available." "I saved for that car for 7 years, Madison." She shook her head. "Dad, it's $94,000. I'm aware of that. I wrote the check." Trent came back in. "Dad, you're living too large. You need to scale back. You know that." Living too large. I let that phrase sit in the room for a moment. Let it breathe. Ellie appeared in the doorway. "Can I get anyone something to Mom? We're talking." Trent barely looked at her. Ellie's jaw tightened slightly. She looked at me. I gave her the smallest nod. "Trent," she started. "Ellie, it's fine," I said quietly. "Let them finish." Trent turned back. "Dad, you need to be setting money aside. For your future." He hesitated. "For us, Dad. For the family. What if something happens and you need that money later?" "For us." There it was. "You're going to leave us with nothing." Madison said it quietly, looking at her hands when she said it. But she said it. I looked at her directly. "Is that what you said?" She held my ground. "I'm being honest." I nodded slowly. Looked at the floor. Looked back up. Maggie Ellie was still in the doorway, her face saying, "Please don't let this turn into something we can't pull back from." I took a breath. "You're both right." I said it calmly. "You're right that I need to be more careful." I hear you both. They expected resistance. What they got was agreement, and it confused them enough that they stayed for lunch. They drove home feeling like responsible adult children who had said the hard thing and been heard. They had no idea what I was going to do next. I want to stop here for a second, because I've thought about this moment, Walter sitting across from his 2 children while they told him he was living too large, and I want to be completely honest with you about what I think was happening inside him. There is a version of most people that would have quietly reinstated everything and kept the peace. Because the alternative is terrifying. The alternative is finding out that the people you gave everything to have never had to think about what everything actually cost. But there is another part, and Walter had been sitting on this part for a long time, that looked at what his children just said, and felt something cold and precise and certain settle into place. You don't tell a man who gave 36 years of his life, who wore the same boots for 9 years so you could have what you needed, that he is living too large. You just don't. I think Walter felt both of those things simultaneously. And I think the reason he chose the spreadsheet over the silence is that he finally decided he had earned the right to be seen. After Ellie was asleep, I went to my office. The small room off the hallway at the back of the house, that my children had always called Dad's room, because it was understood, without ever being stated, that it was mine. I sat down, opened my laptop, pulled up my accounts. 38 active recurring monthly payments, some large, some small, every single one of them moving, quietly and automatically, toward the same 2 people who had just sat in my living room and told me I was living too large. I started with the smallest one. Then I just kept going. Stay with me. Because what happened over the next 6 weeks, I promise you nobody in that house was ready for it. It started with Trent. Trent leased a 2022 Audi Q5, sharp car. Lease payment $688 a month. His name was on the lease. My account number was on the autopay. I was sitting on my back patio on a Tuesday morning reading the paper the way I like to physical copy. No screen, just me in the desert light and whatever birds decide to come through when my phone buzzed. Trent. I let it ring twice. Picked up. Dad. His voice had that compressed, controlled sound people use when they are one thin layer away from losing it. Did something happen with your bank? Good morning to you too, Trent. Dad, I just got an alert from the dealer. My lease payment bounced. Is there a problem with your account? A glitch? I set my coffee down. Dad, What does that mean? My payment bounced. I already have a late notice. You might want to look into your own arrangement, son. Silence. Look into Dad. You pay that. You've always paid that. I know. So what happened? I'm scaling back, Trent. I kept my voice the same temperature the entire time. Room temperature, not warm, not cold. You told me to. Remember? A longer silence this time. The kind that has understanding beginning to move through it. Dad, the car payment. Have a good Tuesday, son. I hung up. I picked up my paper. The desert birds were completely indifferent. Madison was sharper. She always had been. She probably assumed Trent's situation was a bank error, a one-time glitch that Dad would sort out. She wasn't yet connecting anything. Then her gym membership was canceled. Then her streaming services went dark across a 48-hour window, all three of them, back to back, like lights being switched off down a hallway one by one. Then her apartment Wi-Fi, which had been running through a family plan I'd maintained since she signed her first lease, simply stopped working on a Wednesday night. She called Ellie first. I heard Ellie's side of the conversation from the hallway. Mom, my internet just stopped, and my Netflix and Hulu are both gone. The gym sent me a cancellation notice. Mom, what is happening? Ellie looked up and found me standing in the hallway. Her face did three things at once: worry for Madison, understanding of what I had done, and a careful effort to stay neutral in front of both of us at the same time. Honey, just give me one day. Let me talk to your father. She hung up. We stood there. Walter, Ellie. Her internet is out. She works from home twice a week, Walter. Then she can call a provider and set up her own account. She's 27 years old. Ellie. How much is a Wi-Fi plan? What does it run? $60, $70 a month? She's 27. She can't manage $60 a month on top of everything else? Ellie went quiet. I went back to my chair. By the second week of October, both kids' phones were throttling. They had been on my family plan since high school. I didn't cancel their lines. I simply logged into the account and dropped their data access to 2G. No notification from me. No warning from the carrier. Just a sudden, inexplicable crawl that turned every app into a loading wheel. Trent called 4 times in a single day. Each call was a degree hotter than the last. I answered the 4th one. Dad, my phone has been useless since this morning. I can't load a map in my car. I had to pull into a coffee shop just to send an email. You should probably look into setting up your own plan. My own dad. I've been on your plan for 10 years. I know. I'm scaling back. You told me to. I told you to cut back on buying cars, Dad. Not on. You said I was living too large, Trent. I let that sit in the air. You came to my house and told me I had too many payments going out. So I reduced them. Those were your personal. Many of them were yours. Dead silence. There it is. He's starting to understand. How many did you cancel? His voice had changed. The heat was gone. Something more careful had arrived in its place. All of them. Every single one. He was quiet for a long moment. He hung up first. Ellie came to me on a Friday afternoon. She came the way she always comes when she has passed her limit. Not loud, not sharp, just quiet and direct and fully present. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, folded her hands on the surface, and looked at me with the eyes that have been reading my face for 38 years. Walter, please. Trent got a second late notice on the car. If it isn't paid in 10 days, it goes to the credit bureau. She paused. And Madison called me this morning crying. She said she can't cover rent and her own utilities on what she earns. You know that, Walter. You've always known that. I do know that. And that is the problem, Ellie. She's 27 years old. I know she can't cover her own rent. That is the problem. That is the exact problem. Ellie looked at her hands. There are children. They're adults who walked into my home and told me I needed to stop spending money on myself. I kept my voice level. I wasn't angry. I was something colder and more precise than anger. I was resolved. George, Walter. You know they didn't mean it the way it came out. Then what did they mean? She didn't answer. What exactly did they mean when they said the money I was spending belonged to them? Ellie's eyes filled. She held the tears without letting them fall. I know, she said softly. I know they were wrong. Then let me finish what I started. She looked up. Trust me, I said. The way you have always trusted me. She held my gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. Once. Just once. She stood up and went back to the kitchen. That was the last time she asked me to stop. Now here is where it gets interesting. My nephew Danny, my brother Phil's boy, 29 years old, constitutionally incapable of keeping anything to himself, ran into Trent at a sports bar in mid-October. They got to talking. And Danny, who has never met a secret he didn't accidentally release, let it slip that he had heard from Phil, who had heard from Ellie, who had apparently been crying to Phil's wife on the phone one evening while thinking it was a private conversation. Walter is locking everything into a trust. That was all Danny said. That was all he needed to say. Because by Sunday morning, both kids knew. And by Sunday morning, the car was no longer the issue. Trent called at 7:48 inches the morning. I was already on the patio, already on my second coffee. I looked at the screen and felt something I can only describe as very deep, very quiet satisfaction. Dad, call me when you get this. It's important. Madison, 10 minutes later. Dad, I heard something and I just need to talk to you. Please call me. By 9 o'clock, Trent had called 3 times. By 11, Madison was calling Ellie. By noon, the visits had started. Suddenly, Trent was available for Sunday dinner. Suddenly, Madison was stopping by midweek just to check in. They brought things. Trent brought a bag of the dark roast coffee I prefer. Madison showed up with a pie from the bakery on Camelback Road that I had mentioned exactly once in passing, which told me she had been coordinating with Ellie. I accepted everything graciously. Thanked them both. Sat with them. Let them be warm and attentive, and remarkably interested in how I was doing. I did not bring up the trust. I did not bring up the payments. I did not bring up the spreadsheet or the word us. I just watched. Funny what the possibility of inheritance does to a person's schedule. And once, just once, while Trent was talking and not watching her, Ellie caught my eye from across the room, and she almost smiled. They thought the cancelled payments were the point. They thought the trust was the threat. They had no idea I hadn't yet gotten to the part I had been building for weeks. If you have ever poured your entire life into the people you love and wondered, quietly and alone, whether they truly see you, this part is for you. Because here is what I want to say before I tell you what happened next. Walter had spent 36 years making himself invisible in service of his family. Not reluctantly, willingly, proudly, and in doing so with the best intentions a father can have, he had accidentally raised 2 people who had never had to think about what any of it cost. That is not cruelty on their part. That is the consequence of love without receipts. The question is whether it was too late to hand them the bill. I chose a Sunday in early November. I called them both the evening before. Kept it simple. Come for dinner tomorrow. 1 o'clock. Don't be late. Trent said, Is everything okay, Dad? Everything's fine. 1 o'clock. Madison said, Should I bring anything? Just yourself. I hung up and went to my office, opened the locked drawer on the right side of my desk, pulled out a folder I had been building since October, sat with it for a while. 36 years of documentation, 20 years of payments, 138 pages, printed clean, organized by year, by category, by name, by recipient. I closed the folder, went to bed, slept the way a man sleeps when he has no unfinished business. They arrived together. Trent's Audi he had caught up on the payments, I noticed, pulled into the driveway at 12:58. I watched them from the front window. They sat in the car for 2 full minutes before getting out. 2 minutes of preparing, of aligning, of deciding who was going to say what first. I opened the door before they knocked. Ellie had made her baked rigatoni. The edges of the cheese dark and perfect. The fennel sausage packed in heavy. The kind of dish that makes the whole house smell like every good Sunday from the last 20 years stacked on top of each other. We ate first. I insisted on that. Madison tried to steer toward the trust twice during the meal. I redirected both times, asked Trent about a project at work, complimented Ellie on the cornbread, passed the salad. Let them eat. Let them settle. Let them think. Maybe this is just dinner. Maybe this is just Dad. When the plates were cleared, I stood. Let's go sit in the living room. I let them get settled. Ellie in her chair near the window. Trent and Madison on the sofa. Same positions as October. Same room. Completely different weight in the air. I went to my office. Came back with the folder. Sat down across from them. Set the folder on the coffee table. Did not open it yet. I want to go back to what was said in this room in October. Trent shifted. Dad, about all of that, the payments we didn't realize. I know you didn't. I said it quietly, levelly, And honestly, that's my fault. I never showed you. I never sat you down and made any of it real. I have been correcting that error for the last 6 weeks. I'm finishing that today. I opened the folder. This is a spreadsheet. 38 line items. 20 years. I turned it around and slid it across the coffee table. Take a look at the first page. They both leaned forward. Trent picked it up. I watched his eyes move across the columns. Watch them slow down. Watch something leave his face the way color leaves a room when the sun goes behind a cloud. First column is the payment. Second column is the monthly amount. Third column is how many months. Fourth column, I tapped the table once, is the total. Madison was reading over Trent's shoulder. Her hand came up slowly and covered her mouth. I said nothing. Numbers don't need help. Numbers don't get nervous. Numbers don't hedge. Numbers don't say I was just concerned or I didn't mean it the way it sounded. Numbers sit there and tell the precise truth regardless of whether the room is ready for it. Trent turned the page, then the next page, then the next. 20 years laid out in black and white lease payments, insurance premiums, apartment deposits, cell phone plans, tuition balances, security deposits, moving expenses, gym memberships, streaming accounts, car repairs, dental copays, rent supplements, medical costs, and 80-some other quiet expenditures that had flowed from my account into their lives like water they had never had to think about, because it was simply always there. Because I made sure it was always there. Because making sure it was always there was what I had chosen to do with 36 years. He reached the last page. The total line. He stared at it. His jaw moved once and then stopped. Dad. His voice came out in a register I had never heard from him, stripped of everything that usually lives in it. This says $1.1 million. $1.1 million. Over 20 years, give or take. The room didn't make a sound. I want to stay in this moment for a second, because I think it is the most important one in the entire story. When Trent reads that number, when his voice comes out thin and strange, what is happening is not embarrassment. It is not guilt. Exactly. What is happening is that a grown man is seeing, for the very first time, the full architecture of the life he has been living and understanding that he had no idea who built it or what it cost. That is a specific and devastating kind of reckoning. And the reason Walter did not say it with anger, did not throw it across the room or use it as a weapon, is because that was never the point. The point was simply, see it, just once, see it clearly. Madison's eyes were bright. She was at that threshold just before tears where everything becomes fragile and one wrong breath tips it over. Trent set the papers down carefully, like they had become something that required handling. Dad, he said quietly, I never knew. I know you didn't. That was exactly the point. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, looked at both of them. You came into this house in October and told me I was living too large. You told me I needed to scale back. You told me I was going to leave you with nothing. I paused. I want to ask you something, and I need you to actually sit with it before you answer. Another pause. Which part of that 1.1 million was living too large? Nobody spoke. Good, there is no answer. I bought one car. One. In 36 years of working. One car for myself. $80-some thousand. And you sat in that room and made me feel like I had done something irresponsible. I shook my head slowly. I agreed with you. You remember that I sat right there, and I agreed. But I went to my office that night and I looked at every line on that sheet and I thought, if my own children believe that $94,000 for their father is too much, let's find out what they think about 1.1 million for themselves. Trent opened his mouth. I'm not finished. He closed it. I am not here to punish you. I want that to be completely clear. I am not angry. I am not doing this to hold anything over you. I am here because I love you both, and I have spent 20 years making your lives so comfortable that I have accidentally robbed you of the chance to understand what comfort actually costs. That is on me. I own that. But it ends now. Not because I'm angry. Because I am your father and I love you too much to keep doing it. I reached into the folder and drew out a second document. Cleaner. Shorter. My attorney had prepared it 3 weeks earlier. I have had my estate restructured into a revocable living trust. The assets are still yours eventually. But they are protected now. They do not simply transfer. Trent, I looked at him directly. The trustee will not release $1 to you without documented proof of consistent employment over 2 consecutive years. Madison, 18 consecutive months of independently covering your own housing costs before anything moves toward you. Madison looked up. Dad, I can't. On what I earn, I can barely, I know that. And that is not me being cruel. That is me telling you that something is structurally wrong with that situation, and the answer has never been my checkbook. I held her gaze. You are smart, you are capable, and I have been standing in the way of you discovering that for 27 years. That stops now. Her chin trembled. The tears came, one at a time, quietly. Trent was reading the trust document, jaw tight, turning pages slowly. He set it down. What about the payments? Cancelled permanently. He looked up. All of them? All of them. Dad. His voice was controlled, but only barely. My car payment bounced. I had to borrow money from a friend because I had no idea what was happening with my own finances. Finances I had been counting on. Finances that were never yours to count on. I held his gaze. But you figured it out. He looked away. Yeah, quietly. I did. Right. So you already know you can. Trent stood up. Not slowly, not calmly. The way people stand up when something happening inside them is too large for a body to contain sitting down. You don't just cancel everything without a word, and then hand me a legal document like it's a performance review. Dad, I have a job. I've had a job. What does holding it for 2 years even mean? It means you hold it without a safety net underneath you. He stopped. He put both hands on the top of his head, pressed down. Do you understand what these 2 months have been? I got calls from the dealership, Dad. I had to borrow money. I didn't know what was happening with my own situation. Finances that were never yours to count on. Dead silence. Then Madison stood, and that is when I saw it. The softness was gone. The tears were gone. What was underneath was something harder and more honest than either. Fine, she said. Fine. She picked up her bag. But don't sit there like you're doing us a favor. You didn't do this to teach us something. You did this because we hurt your feelings about a car. She flinched even as she finished saying it, because she knew the part that wasn't true, and the part that wasn't true was the part that hurt. You were worried about your inheritance. She flinched, because it landed, because she could not argue it, and that made her angrier than anything else I could have said, because the anger was really something else wearing anger's clothes. We're leaving. She looked at Trent. Let's go. Trent was still looking at me. Something was moving behind his eyes. I couldn't fully read anger, yes, and beneath it something younger, something that didn't want to walk to the door. But Madison was already moving toward it, and Trent has always followed his sister. He picked up his keys from the side table. He didn't look at Ellie. He looked at me one last time. I hope the car was worth it, Dad. He walked out. The door closed quietly behind them. That almost made it worse. A door slammed in anger is a feeling. A door pulled gently shut is a decision. I sat there and listened to the Audi back out of the driveway. Listened to the street return to its ordinary quiet. Then I heard Ellie. She was still standing in the middle of the living room, hands at her sides, shoulders up around her ears, and she was crying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just steadily, the way a woman cries when she has been holding something too long and the wall finally gives. Walter. My name broke on one syllable. My babies just walked out. I stood up, crossed the room, put both arms around her. She gripped the back of my shirt the way you grip something when you need proof that solid things still exist. They'll be okay, I said quietly into her hair. She pulled back slightly. Her eyes were red. Her face was every year I had loved her, every worry, every line of it. What if they don't come back? They'll come back. Walter, Ellie. I held her face in both my hands. Looked at her directly. Everything is going to be okay. Not today. Maybe not for a while, but okay. I trust that. She searched my face for the Walter she had built a life beside the steady one, the one who had not once in 38 years made her a promise he did not keep. She found him. She nodded. I walked her to the kitchen, sat her down, poured her tea, sat across from her in the quiet house that still smelled like good food, and the life we had built out of nothing but intention and time. Here is what I think this story is really about. It is not about the car. It never was. It is about what happens when you make yourself invisible for long enough, in service of the people you love, when you absorb every edge, smooth every landing, remove every consequence, and they begin, without malice, to confuse your sacrifice for infrastructure. They are not bad people. They are the product of what you built. And the question Walter had to answer for himself, sitting alone in that office at midnight with a spreadsheet on his screen, was whether he was going to spend whatever years he had left being invisible, or whether he was finally going to be seen. He bought a car, one car, in 36 years of working, and he is not going to apologize for a single thing about it. If this story sat with you in a way you recognize, if you have ever given everything quietly and watched someone take the quiet for granted, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment. Type 1 if you think Walter was completely right, 2 if you think he was right but the trust conditions were too hard, 3 if you think he should have had the conversation before canceling everything. I want to know where you land. And tell me where you're watching this from. What city? What time is it where you are right now? If you have ever been in a room where someone looked right past everything you gave them like it simply didn't exist, drop a comment below. You don't have to say more than that. You don't have to explain it. I'll understand exactly what you mean. If this story stayed with you, hit the like button before you close out. And subscribe because these are the stories I think about long after everything else goes quiet. I don't want you to miss what's coming next. I'd love to have you here for it. This is a fictional story, inspired by real emotional experiences, fully rewritten and reimagined, set in the Chandler, Arizona area, to create wholly original content. Any resemblance to real people, living or deceased, or to actual events, is entirely coincidental.